Reckless indifference for me was an extension of my experience making Waco, the rules of engagement, in that I was entering into a situation where it was a done deal. 5 kids had been convicted to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Done. They're in prison. When I came on the scene, they were already in prison. And the challenge was unraveling that and showing how their sentencing and how their conviction was inappropriate and was unjust. And it wasn't a typical I didn't do it story. Somebody did do something. There was a death. And one of those 5 kids is technically responsible for that death. So that was not an argument. The argument was, how did 5 young men, 2 of whom were 15 years old, end up in prison for the rest of their lives without the possibility of parole? And so the challenge there was trying to build that case in a manner that wasn't reactionary, that was well considered, that was accurate. And it was different from Waco in that Waco really involved a cover-up. There were things that happened at Waco that were just plain covered up. They were against the law. They were treacherous, murderous things that were hidden. Reckless indifference does not involve a cover-up. It involves no cover-up. It really involves technically no breaking of the law. It involves a very severe misapplication of the process of the law. And it involves the misuse of authority and the misuse of power and the manipulation of public sentiment and the manipulation of a jury and the misapplication of certain statutes that ended up in an egregious and just over-the-top outcome. And so it was a different kind of challenge in that regard, but it was also similar in that I had to change people's minds. I had to change an obvious initial perception, which is, well, they were convicted. You know, how can our jury, everybody's so supportive of our jury system, which is the best system in the world. It is a jury of your peers. But at the same time, the jury was misled. The jury was misinformed. We found out later that there were things kept from the jury that they should have known. So there weren't really any laws broken, but there were improprieties in the process. The difficult thing about making Reckless Indifference was that we had 7 main characters and only one was available to the camera. And he was not the main character, the central character. He was a key ancillary character. That was Brandon Hine. So that made the story very difficult to tell because we could not get to the people that the story was about. They're all in prison. And there was no access to them with a camera in prison. In California, the press is not allowed access to specific prisoners. And that was a great inhibition in being able to make this project. So in the editing process, trying to edit together a cohesive, understandable story without access to the central players was very challenging. The other thing challenging about making Reckless Indifference is that the story itself is a very nuanced, detailed kind of story. There are many little things that add up in the end to being very important. So understanding what those little things were and how they added to the outcome without the film seeming unusually mundane or detail-focused was a challenge in the editing room.